I wanted to talk about something that terrifies an awful lot of people doing this business acquisition process, and that is cold calling, scary stuff. In the beginning, it is for most people. But there's a lot of ways to contact sellers. You can contact them by email, you can contact them by letters, you can contact them by cold calls. And what I'm going to focus on are cold calls. And this is going to be two parts. This is going to be part one. And then Monday I'm going to do part two on this. So the first thing that you want to think about is, how are you going to keep track of all these people that you contact? Some people start with a piece of paper initially, then they move on to a spreadsheet, then that doesn't work, and finally, hopefully, they use a CRM. And there are free CRMs. HubSpot is one where you can put in who you talk to, their contact information, and take the notes on what the discussion is. Now, where most people go wrong is that they do not put that information in after the call. So you make a ton of calls, you end up not remembering who you spoke to. I know it's going to be hard to believe, but if you do 10, 20, 50, 100 calls in a day, you are not going to remember which one was which. So use a CRM, certainly. And if you use a CRM, you want to think about too, who is it that I want to call? So make sure that you have your essentially avatar down on the prospects. What size do you want them to be? How many employees? What's their revenue or turnover? Are they profitable? And to what extent are they profitable? And have those things down. You can look at their website. You can do an awful lot of things. There's a program or software actually, website that's Instant Checkmate. If you know the principal, you can go to Instant Checkmate and you can find out a ton of information about that person. That is much, much better than calling up and getting a gatekeeper and saying, can you connect me with the owner? That usually doesn't work too well. And what the reason for that is, they think you didn't even know who the owner is. So this must be a sales call. This may be something else. So do that initial work. Do that to figure out what you're hearing about it. I'd also encourage you to go to Google reviews and see what people are saying about that business, certainly. Okay. So gatekeepers. A lot of businesses have a gatekeeper. And I had a mentee in my VIP mastermind that was a gatekeeper for a C-suite of a very large bank. Chairman, CEO, CFO, that sort of thing. So I said, that's interesting. So who gets through to you? And she said, oh, okay. Really four things. One, brevity, tone of voice, confidence, and genuinely wanting my help as opposed to talking down to me. So remember those things. Brevity, confidence, tone of voice, and asking for help. A lot of times I would say, don't know if you can help me with this, but, and then the question that I wanted to ask. So think about those. So what's the job of a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper, particularly a good one, their job is to screen the calls and only pass on calls that are important to the person they're guarding the gate to. And if they begin to let too many calls in that are a waste of time, oftentimes those are sales calls, they won't be the gatekeeper very often. So remember that. One of the best things you can do to help yourself is get a book called Selling to Veto. Very important top officer. And in that it tells you how vetoes think, and it also talks a lot about getting through to gatekeepers. What you don't want to do is you don't want to sound like a salesperson. You don't want to start off, hi, good morning, how are you today, how's the weather, that sort of thing. Remember that brevity part. One of the things that's worked best for a lot of people is when you know the name, to call up, gatekeeper answers, hi, can you connect me with Jim? Or if Jim's not available, what do you think is the best number or way to leave him a message or her a message? And if you do, can you connect me with Jim? And then real quickly go to, if he's not available or in, can you tell me the best way to leave him a message or contact him? You don't give a lot of space in that for someone to say, what is this regarding? Which you're going to get sometimes. So you get, what is this regarding? You can try, this is personal. Sometimes you're talking to a gatekeeper that's been there for 25 years. You're talking to the husband or wife of the owner. So that oftentimes is a problem. So I would say to that, it's personal, but I do want to tell you this is not a sales call. This is actually about buying some of your services. Is that true? Yeah, you want to buy part of their company or all of their company. So it absolutely is true. And so that may get you through. If they say, no, I can't connect you unless it's you tell me what it's regarding. Okay. So if you hear that, what you can do is say, okay, it is personal. I don't know what your relationship is with Jim or Mary, whoever the owner is. So if they share personal information with you, then I'm happy to tell you what it's regarding. And if they say, yeah, I've been here for 25 years, there's not much that isn't personal with me. Okay, so we're looking to invest in businesses in whatever the town is, came across your business, looked at the website, did some background, seemed like it might be a good candidate, so I wanted to talk to Jim or Mary about that, certainly. Okay, so remember that. And a lot of times gatekeepers can be very, very busy. So surprisingly, sometimes they put you through with very little effort. But sometimes they ask you a ton of questions. Now, if they say, and you don't want to share what this is regarding for whatever reason, no, I'm not going to, he wouldn't be interested in a call like that. Okay. I'd still try to get through, but if I couldn't get through, he wouldn't be interested in the call. We don't take calls like that. He doesn't want to talk, or she doesn't want to talk to people like that. I would then go around that person. I would end up finding an email address, another phone number, and just write an email, write a note, write a letter, whatever it is, to that person saying, I contacted your office. We were interested in acquiring a portion of your business or investing in your business, and wanted to talk to you. Mary, Jim, whoever the gatekeeper is, said you wouldn't be interested in that, but I thought that was something that only you could make a decision with, so I just wanted to contact you. Are you going to burn the gatekeeper a little bit? Yeah, but a good gatekeeper is going to say, I thought it was a typical sales call, and I didn't want to pass that through to you. So there's more than one way to certainly go about this process. So that's the gatekeeper part of things. Knowing the businesses you want to contact, knowing the name of the person. You do not want to call up and say, connect me with the owner. As I said, you want to know the person, you want to know something about him, and then have that discussion with the gatekeeper. Remember selling to veto, certainly. And then you've hopefully gotten on to the owner. So in part 2, I want to talk about what that owner conversation looks like. But one of the things that we do in the VIP Mastermind, and you've probably gotten some emails from me on that, there are some open spots, is we do role plays. And it is amazing to me, 2 things. And it shouldn't be amazing after all these years of doing this, but it still is. One, how poor people listen. And then 2, that how poor they are thinking on their feet with a interaction like this. And that's why this practice is important, and that's why we spend so much time on the VIP Mastermind in the 2-day events that we do, doing role plays, so that we can say, okay, what works, what doesn't work, how do we fix that? A lot of times what people do in making a mistake, sure, they're nervous, but they end up having a script, and they're so fixated on the script that they aren't listening. They're waiting for the next thing they want to say. So I'm not a fan of word-for-word scripts. I am a fan for bullet points, knowing what you want to cover, and then being able to cover those things. But you're going to get better as you go. I have a mentee who said, his words, not mine, I am absolutely terrified of making cold calls. Okay. So tomorrow, just make 5 calls. That's it. And don't try to set the world on fire. get your avatar of your prospects, sellers, know their names, and make 5 calls. So I asked him the next day if he made 5 calls. He said, no, I didn't. I started, and I ended up, I think the number was 140 calls that he made. That mentee now has done up to 1,006 calls, I believe is the highest for a week. He's not afraid of them anymore. But one of the things that's important is when you're making those calls, what are you hearing? What can you pick up about that call and what went well and what didn't go well? If you're in a place you can record the calls, great. If you can't legally do it, wouldn't advise you to do it. But understand, okay, I lost that person right there, or boy, that really connected with them. And remember those comments about a gatekeeper. A lot of people talk down to a gatekeeper, and that doesn't work very well. I got a call because one of the things I did with the VIP Mastermind in those emails that hopefully you saw was I said, if you are serious about the VIP Mastermind, give me a call. And I gave him the number. If you've gotten to this point in the video, I'm going to give you the number, 203-257-6407. That's a number that goes directly to me. And I ended up having some calls. Most of the time I was able to answer it, but we all get a lot of spam calls, so some of them I didn't answer. But I had a call that I missed. I called back and said, and they said, who is this? And I said, who is this? And I had a missed call from you. Oh, well, I've made a lot of calls, so what's your name? Now, each time I get the feeling that this is a sales call and they're just making a bunch of calls, I lose more and more interest. And so I mentioned Bruce. Oh, Bruce. Okay. Still didn't really know it, eventually caught on. But by that time, there were 3 or 4 things that told me this is just a series of calls that this person's making, and I'm no different than anyone else. Turned out that wasn't true. They were actually calling about the VIP, but their phone skills were pretty poor. Now, let's look at that differently. Let's say I'm the person making the outgoing calls, okay? So now I get a call back. If I have used my CRM, if I'm quick on my CRM, I may be able to put in that number and recognize who that person is calling. If I'm not that quick, I'd let it go to voicemail. Busy people, stuff goes to voicemail. Then take that number, put it in your CRM, see what it is. Then when you call back, or if you were to answer it, if you were quick enough, oh, hi, Jim, thanks for returning my call. And so now I'm thinking, you didn't make that many calls if you know this is Jim or Mary or whoever it is. So those are some tips that I think will help you with cold calling. I am a big fan of sending an email or sending a letter and then following up on that letter. It also makes it easier to get through to gatekeepers when they say, what's it regarding? I had sent Jim or Mary a letter, just wanted to follow up on that letter. It's a pretty important letter. And that may be enough to get you through. But using a CRM is really critical to this process. So I hope you're doing that. And remember, there are other options in cold calling, particularly if you're in the medical profession. A lot of times doctors, if that's who you're trying to reach, are with patients. So that will be tougher than most to get through. They're with patients, so that's the reason you get the questions from the front desk or gatekeeper, which usually is pretty busy. So with them, letters, etc., maybe letters to their homes, there's ways to find out those addresses are the most effective. But all of these can work, and that's why you want to try them. So that's that. Part 2, I'm going to talk about the discussion with the owner. And again, there are open spots in the VIP Mastermind. If you go over to brucewhipple.com, go to the coaching, read that. It's going to say sold out. Don't pay attention to that. The reason I put that down is I want to have a discussion with someone before I take their money to make sure they're going to be a fit. So hope this one was helpful, cold calling part 1. And on Monday, I will do cold calling part 2. So have a good weekend, but begin to put these things into action, certainly. If you do not know the steps, they are critically important to the success of this. go over to brucewhipple.com, look at the Acquisition Advantage Bootcamp recordings, and that's the best way that I've done so far to know the steps, learn the steps, so that you actually know what to do, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm going to call and try to buy a business. It doesn't usually work too well. Okay, carry on, keep pushing.